a lot of people have been asking for it, so I think we're going to move on.
Well, there was something at the JCC, but nothing ever happened with it.
There weren't enough people interested, so now we shall. So, what topic is today? Does anyone remember?
You changed so many times.
I did change so many times. Today we are talking about happy things. Things that are typically happy. Yes, wedding. And I may do a little bit of show and tell if you'd like once we
nice. Sorry, I should have brought my tuba.
So did I remember to bring my iPad? Yes, I did. Okay, so what should we start with? What do we know about Jewish weddings? Thank you for waiting. For shutting the fire, right?
Orthodox, Reform, Conservative.
Well, what is across the board? You get married under a chuppah. Excellent. We have the canopy. Wonderful canopy. What else?
You're married by a rabbi.
For chaps.
You don't have to be, but...
You don't have to be.
But
you can be married by a Jewish.
You can be married by a boat captain and still have it as a Jewish wedding.
And you break the glass.
It's not necessarily recommended, but yes, if you are a float, if you are in the Indian Ocean and you can have a Jewish marriage while married by a let's pick a Kenyan boat captain in the Indian Ocean. It can still be a Jewish wedding.
Okay.
Yes.
And you smash the glass.
Exactly. You do smash the glass.
And you say 7 prayers.
Symbolically. Yes, there are these Sheva brachot, these 7...
That glass breaking thing doesn't always work out for people.
Well, this is why in some cases they'll say, oh, we're putting a glass and then magically switch it with a light bulb. Who broke his foot?
Somebody has not
Yes.
but never broke the glass.
Oh, this is on. Sorry, if you've broken your foot, I withdraw my comment. How unfortunate for you.
So we talked about that because I was like inspecting things.
Yes.
That's wild.
So, I have a couple of, a bunch of photocopies from 2 sources. One is from Anita Diamond's The New Jewish Wedding, which is a spectacular resource, and it is updated as well. Miriam and I used the updated version.
Especially if you didn't know what
Sergio, I'll give you yours, your copy as well.
Joe and I remember.
Everything, well, not everything you wanted to know about Jewish weddings, but something to start with. And then the second resource, which I had bought a while ago and then just looked at today for the first time, is spectacular. It is called, what is it called? It's called The Perfect Stranger's Guide to Wedding Ceremonies, and it goes through every major religious tradition. No, it's not weddings for dummies so much as wedding guests for dummies. What to expect at different traditions. So after we talk about the basics of the Jewish wedding, we'll go through, if you're showing up to a Jewish wedding, what to note for
We
yourself.
actually put it in. The rabbi that taught my conversion class had done it for his daughter's wedding, except it was 15 pages. I condensed it down to 7. And that was what was in our program, because we had so many people that had never been to a Jewish wedding.
Yeah. So let's look. Where does the tradition of marriage come from? What's the first commandment that we're given in the Torah that goes to everybody, not just the people? Pru or vu. Be fruitful and multiply. Peri ha'etz, or perot are fruits. So literally, be fruitful. Pru will vu and become many.
Isn't it true that you're not supposed to stop until you have a son and a daughter? In theory?
I like to think that it says at least 2. So you are at least... I mean, I don't know fully the answer to that. Where I would see the logic in that is that everybody wants a son to carry on the name. Daughters are special too, because everybody's special. But the other thing that people say is that you need to have at least 2, so that way you are not shrinking the Jewish population.
Okay, I've done that.
But this isn't law, this is just custom.
I don't know, to be honest.
I had heard that one time. Somebody said it, especially when I was having Greg, and I was like, look, 3 is my limit, and I'm really sorry.
You have become a daughter in Israel, therefore you have brought a woman to
I'm a
Israel.
+1.
Exactly. You have added to Israel. By the way, when we say Israel, sometimes we mean the people. If Israel is said in the Torah, it more likely refers to people than the land. Otherwise, it will say the land of Israel. So, the tradition of marriage. Who would like to read?
The first of the 613 mitzvot commandments in the
Can you read a
Torah-
little bit louder so the camera can...
Sorry.
Thank you.
The first of the 613 mitzvot commandments in the Torah is Peru, or be fruitful and multiply. Judaism sanctifies every dimension of human experience, from birth to death, from eating to eliminating.
It's true.
Sexuality and procreation are sanctified by marriage, the primary purpose of which is the creation of new life. Every wedding sets the stage for the next generation of the children of Israel. The Talmud records that one who does not participate in be fruitful and multiply causes God's presence to vanish. Indeed, marriage is seen as the prototypical act of creation. The Zohar, the great book of Jewish mysticism, states God creates new worlds constantly. In what way? By causing marriages to take place.
Right, and then you see this brilliant midrash down below in the italics. Does anybody else want to read the italics?
The wedding of the first
Oh,
couple.
no, sorry, the one below that. You can read that part later. Once a Roman matron.
Once a Roman matron asked Rabbi Jose Bar Halafta, how long did it take the Holy One, blessed be He, to create the world? He said to her, 6 days.
Hey, Rob.
From then until now, what has He been doing? The Holy One, blessed be He, is occupied in making marriages. And is that His occupation, the woman asked? Even I can do something.
Even I can do that.
Even I can do that. I have many men slaves and women slaves, and in 1 short hour I can marry them all. Though it may appear easy in your eyes, he said, yet every marriage is as difficult for the Holy One, blessed be He, as the dividing of the sea of reeds. Then Rabbi Jose left her and went on his way. What did the matron do? She took 1,000 men slaves and 1,000 women slaves, placed them in 2 rows, and said, this one should wed that one, and this one should wed that one. In 1 night she married them all. The next day they came before her, one with a wounded head, one with a bruised eye, another with a fractured arm, and one with a broken foot. What is the matter with you? She asked. Each one said, I do not want the one you gave me. Immediately the woman sent for Rabbi Joseph Bar Halafta and said to him, Rabbi, your Torah is true, beautiful, and praiseworthy. Indeed, a suitable match may seem easy to make, yet God considered it as difficult a task as dividing the sea of reeds. Rabbi Joseph acknowledged. That was really
Awesome story,
that's funny.
right?
That
Marriage is a cosmic coupling. It is divine. It is unlikely. It is so unlikely that 2 people will meet, that enough things will occur in their life that their paths will cross to the point where they fall in love and get married. Regardless of that marriage, whether that marriage lasts a lifetime or whether it lasts 10 years. If it lasts 10 years, hopefully most of those 10 years were meant to be. And then a couple of years to extricate yourself from it. But the marriages are divine. At the same time, knowing that this marriage... Oh, and that the marriage... sorry, before I go back to the contradiction at the same time. At the cosmic level, it's creation in itself. It is creation. You have the world, you have the universe, and marriage is creation of a household. We see Judaism not as the religion, tradition of the individual, but as the tradition and religion of a family, of a culture, of a household, of the microcosm of the community. That's the smallest level of Judaism, the family. And so to come together in marriage is really the creation of a new universe. And it's spectacular. Thank you. I didn't come up with it.
You brought it to us.
Thank you. At the same time, knowing we have to be partners with God in this world. It's not enough if we just say, God, you can take care of this. We know there's still many things wrong in this world that we need to perfect. So too with marriage, and the rabbis actually give plenty of laws, mainly to the man, that the man is supposed to do for the woman. There are also responsibilities of the woman to the man, both which would be extrapolated today, both partners to each other, because we have different understandings of what constitutes marriage. And just to get into the real nitty-gritty of it, there is a place in the Talmud where, depending on a man's job, he is required to please his wife, not for the sake of procreation, but just for the sake of pleasure, X amount of times. And so, I believe if the man is a sailor, he's only required to please his wife once every 6 months because he's not around so often. However, if a man is unemployed, he's required to please his wife something like 6 times a month, just to make sure that the relationship is sound. Exactly. So, not saying they are the perfect rules that are there, but there is a notion that marriage takes work. And what we'll get to is we have the ketubah, which I always thought was a very funny word. But ketubah means written, that which is written, and it is a contract that today is a contract between partners in a more liberal tradition. If you go to the Orthodox round, it's a contract in some ways of acquisition, but it is that the man acquires, in a sense, his wife, and that he has certain obligations to her. And so while it seems rather sexist, and it is,
almost archaic.
Yes. At the same time, the value in it is that for the woman, having this contract meant that she was entitled to certain things. So it also served as protection for the woman. So certainly not a perfect document, but there is something revolutionary about it. So,
can I go back for 1 minute?
No.
To what,
Yes.
To what you said before about, a man's supposed to please his wife, whatever.
Yes.
How many times? I read once that the man gets married, and then he's supposed to go, like he's a soldier and has to go work to war. He's not permitted to go for a year because he has to stay home.
That is excellent. Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. I believe the rabbi said that one must get one's house in order before you go off. And in some ways, house is a euphemism for your wife, or for a woman, because the woman really controlled the home, in a sense. And so, yes, if a soldier was married, they were required to spend a year with their spouse.
Can your ketubah be amended?
Your ketubah?
You're kidding, right?
I think you would.
Question.
I would need to do some research on this, so ask me if you're serious. I think we might need to fill out a divorce. It wouldn't require a state divorce. It would require a Jewish divorce, a get, which we would have to go to the sofer to do before doing a new marriage contract. But it's possible. So, just to show you, before we get to that,
We sort of think about prenuptial agreements, and one lady had it written into her prenup how many times she had to deal with her in-laws. Prenuptial agreements are like very. She said that she could visit her in-laws once a month, not to exceed 15 annually, and she wrote it down. Catherine Zeta-Jones's prenup has a cheating clause, which is per woman, per incident. Why do you think Michael Douglas is home all the time? For that idiot that was married to Tiger Woods, she could have made a lot of money doing that.
yes.
It's per woman, per incident.
Of course, per incident leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
Absolutely.
Yes. I did not have sexual intercourse with that woman.
And it's like
That's
it's a
the other
thing.
name.
So I'm just saying that, our ketubah, when I got married, I didn't know as much as I do now, and it was just I picked it out because it was pretty, and it didn't say anything offensive. So, and it doesn't really cover what we
So there are different
It's
kinds
sort
of.
general.
We'll get to the ketubah in a moment. There are different kinds of marriages, but first, just to go through the different points, question of who can get married in a Jewish ceremony. There are different interpretations of it. Traditionally, a Jewish ceremony is a ceremony between a man and a woman who are both Jewish. And the majority of rabbis will perform, well, across the board, as long as a rabbi feels that that's a good coupling and that that's not something that's going to end quickly. It's a marriage that they'll perform. More frequently now do we see, mostly in liberal circles, in Reform circles, a little bit in conservative, we'll see same-sex unions, where the understanding behind that, for rabbis who do it, I myself would do that, I haven't had the opportunity to yet, is that that the Jewish understanding of marriage, or the understanding of a Jewish wedding, is a union of two Jews in love. So that means that two Jews, because if the idea is procreation and creating a Jewish household, then there's the understanding that two Jews who are of the same sex will be able to do that as well, and should do that. Then there's the other question of what happens when a Jew and a non-Jew are getting married. Sometimes the non-Jew would convert before that, and did you convert? You converted before marriage?
Mm-hmm. When we finished my conversion the week of our wedding, we got married on Sunday, and I went to the mikvah and finished conversion Thursday.
Right down to the hour. Well done. And sometimes it's not for everyone to convert before the wedding. There are some rabbis who will do interfaith marriages in the idea that it's outreach, that it's a form of outreach, that this is a potential Jewish family. There's some rabbis who, including myself, I won't do an interfaith marriage because while it is definitely outreach, there is also a tradition that we hold to, and my understanding of the ceremony is it's a union of two Jews, so it's a ceremony where that particular ceremony isn't something I could do, where it would apply, but that doesn't mean we don't bless the union and welcome everybody in. It just means it's a ritual that some people feel authentic in doing and some people don't. But you have a Jew and a non-Jew who get married, and sometimes they'll, more often than not, when a rabbi will do that, it has to be an exclusively Jewish ceremony, where you don't have a person from another faith officiating at that ceremony. And that usually it requires a commitment on behalf of the person who's not Jewish that they will raise a Jewish family, because the idea of this is creating a Jewish household.
Which is funny, because most Catholic priests won't participate in an interfaith union unless the non-Catholic promises to raise their kids as Catholic.
Of course.
So now we're at a standoff.
No, they usually send a deacon or somebody else.
So in terms of the rabbi, you don't need a rabbi, because it's a legal, it's a deal, it's a contract, and there's an exchange. When we have the exchange of a ring, it's actually that in the traditional man-woman setting, that the man gives the woman a gift that has to be worth at least a penny, usually in the form of a ring. Yes, or a fifth of a penny. I mean, a fifth of a nickel. But it has to be worth at least that. And then there's the ketubah, the contract that you sign with obligations, to where you have witnesses. That in itself is a marriage. We have developed many more traditions beyond that. And it's also not a legal marriage according to the state. You're required to also do a state, to have a state certificate. The ketubah doesn't count. But, so it's become tradition really since the time of Maimonides to have a rabbi or a member of the clergy be involved. And the other thing is that the two witnesses on your ketubah, on your wedding contract, need to be non-family members. They need to be at least further than cousins, because otherwise there's a bias. You need people who are unbiased. And the traditional Jews will say they need to be mitzvah-observing Jews. Really, they need to be Jewish people in good standing, would be a good way of saying it, because ultimately you want your witnesses to be And this is the traditional perspective. You want your witnesses to be known as competent, upstanding people. So, however you define that.
It's tradition, it's not law.
According to strict halacha, it is law that your witnesses on there be Jewish. Yes. Strict halacha. Liberal people see it a little differently. Personally, I would require that the two witnesses be Jewish. Beyond that, I don't ask more questions. Be Jewish and non-family members. Beyond that, I don't ask more questions. Distant family members are acceptable. And actually, a way that we both have, Miriam and I, some really good friends who are Jewish. We honored them by having them be the witnesses on our civil marriage. And what's important to note, actually, which we particularly need to remind people in Reform Judaism, is that if you ever get divorced, it's not sufficient that you only get a civil divorce. You're also required to get a Jewish divorce, a get.
Excuse me, did you say that you require the witnesses to be family members or distant family members?
Non-family members.
Oh, non-family members.
Correct.
But they could be distant family members. Like
Yes.
Second cousin?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you have to get a civil... My understanding is that all you really need is a wedding license, and then a religious wedding is, at least in the United States,
Yes.
constitutes a state-sanctioned wedding.
It constitutes a state-sanctioned wedding, however, you still need to fill out state paperwork.
Okay, but do you need witnesses for that?
Yes, you do for state paperwork. You also need your officiant to be somebody who is recognized by the state. By the fact that I'm recognized by New York State, I'm also able to do it in New Jersey. But there is this ledger at City Hall in New York City that has my name in there and says that I am a qualified marriage officiant in the state of New York. Yes. And I still have not performed a wedding since being qualified for that. Prior to that, I performed weddings in tandem with somebody who was also qualified.
So in terms of the witnesses then, if let's say somebody gets a wedding from a state-approved rabbi, they have to go to take witnesses with them to court, to municipal court, to fill out the paperwork, take their marriage license?
What happens with the paperwork is the paperwork you bring to your wedding. So at the wedding, you'll fill out the ketubah before the ceremony, and typically you'll also fill out that paperwork there and then hand it to the rabbi or the officiant, and then they'll ship it off.
And then you'll get your marriage license.
Correct.
Oh, I
But
see.
in
Okay.
some jurisdictions, you have to bring a witness to apply for your marriage license as well.
Oh, wow.
So New Jersey is like that. You have
Interesting.
to bring somebody with you to watch you sign it.
I'm still new to the legal aspect.
It depends on where you're at. For the most part, it's like that. You just somebody brings it to whatever jurisdiction you're in.
So you say in New Jersey the rabbi can't just mail it in?
It depends on the township.
If
And
that's
the
okay,
country
though,
can do that.
Okay.
I would
That is
like
the
to
New
focus
Jersey.
on learning the
sure,
Jewish
sure,
aspects because I'm not an expert
Right,
in the
okay.
civil aspects, and
Sure.
And the
you can
ketubah
get
you
that
just take
elsewhere.
home. You don't have to
Correct.
mail it.
Right.
You don't have to mail it anywhere.
Is that
So-
who can get married?
So in terms of the ketubah is the wedding contract that is usually filled out either in private or publicly, depending on your choice. Sometimes filled out with celebration prior to the actual ceremony. So technically speaking, contractually by the ceremony, you have been legally married. But there's a whole process that's part of it. So if you look, the ketubah is sometimes, you could essentially have a sofer just scrawl out a ketubah, which is how it was done really when my parents were married. Where it's really just a simple contract, but it is also seen as an incredible art form. And sometimes they're only in Hebrew or Aramaic, sometimes, and I prefer them to have English translations so everybody, not just the rabbi, knows what it means. And I included some texts here, so you'll see. Did I miss the... Sorry, I photocopied it the wrong way. So if you look at the page that has sample ketubot, and it says page 90 at the top. So it's on the back of the ketubah page.
The back of the ketubah page.
Yes. So you'll see, so I wanted to include an Orthodox ketubah to compare it with an egalitarian tuba, or ketubah, not tuba, ketubah. It looks
The back of the ketubah page is long.
Yeah, no, but go to the next one that has the ketubah text on it.
This one?
Yes.
That
And on the
one?
back of that
What
one.
about that?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, big enough.
Yes. So you see, in the Orthodox ketubah, these are just different traditions, not judging one versus the other, different strokes for different folks, as they say. So on the blank day of the week, the blank day of the month of blank, in the year 5,700, and this year would be 73, since the creation of the world, according to the reckoning which we are accustomed to use here in the city of blank and blank, that so-and-so, son of so-and-so, said to this maiden so-and-so, daughter of so-and-so, of the family so-and-so, be my wife according to the law of Moses and Israel, and I will cherish, honor, support, and maintain you, in accordance with the custom of Jewish husbands who cherish, honor, support, and maintain their wives faithfully. And I here present you with the marriage gift of virgins, a marriage gift that you would give to one who is a young maiden. We assume virginity in the Orthodox tradition. They're not always recommended, but that's a conversation for a different day. 200 silver zuzim, which belongs to you, according to the law of Moses and Israel. And I will give you your food, clothing, and necessities, and live with you as husband and wife according to universal custom. And blank, this maiden consented and became his wife. The trousseau that she brought to him from her father's house in silver, gold, valuables, clothing, furniture, and bedclothes, all this blank, the bridegroom accepted in the sum of 100 silver pieces, and blank, the bridegroom consented to increase this amount from his own property, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. We have followed the legal formality of symbolic delivery, kinyan, acquisition between so-and-so, son of so-and-so, and so-and-so, daughter of so-and-so. This maiden and we have used a garment legally fit for the purpose to strengthen all that is stated above, and everything is valid and confirmed, attested to these witnesses.
Okay, what's a garment legally fit for this purpose?
A ring would be the case, something that you can wear that is acquisition. So what is this? It's a financial contract. This is a legal, it's a financial agreement and behavioral agreement that there was an exchange of property, there was a sharing of property of X amount from one household to the other, and there is also an agreement of obligation, where the husband is required to do such things for the marriage, which is again what I was saying before about the rabbi saying that, yes, this is divinely ordained, let's say. But marriage takes work, and so we're going to make sure that the woman in this case has certain rights. And in a society that is largely patriarchal, where the man is seen as the more powerful one of the two, which that's archaic. But when that was the case, this was a very powerful document for the woman. And now when we do this, this is rare, aside from in ultra-fundamentalist circles where there may be things going on we do not approve of. In Orthodox circles that still use this contract, this is more embracing the history, the tradition of what marriage was, but the understanding that both parties are really responsible to each other. So that is the traditional translation, or traditional form, but if we want to see an example of an egalitarian ketubah, let's look at, so the new ketubah says, on blank day, on this date, the bride, blah, 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 and the groom, blah, blah, blah. You are my husband according to the tradition of Moses and Israel. I shall cherish you and honor you as is customary among the daughters of Israel, who have cherished and honored their husbands in faithfulness and integrity. So we have a behavioral requirement from the woman to the man. And then the man says, you are my wife according to Dat Moshe Israel, according to the tradition of Moses and Israel. I shall cherish you. It's the same language. And the groom and bride have also promised each other to strive throughout their lives together to achieve an openness which will enable them to share their thoughts, their feelings, and their experiences, to be sensitive at all times to each other's needs, to attain mutual intellectual, emotional, physical, and spiritual fulfillment, to work for the perpetuation of Judaism and of the Jewish people in their home, in their family life, and in their communal endeavors. This marriage has been authorized also by the civil authorities of blank, it is valid and binding. And then you see where the witnesses are required to sign, but this is also added that the bride and groom also have to sign. It's not enough that the witnesses acknowledge that the bride and groom are accepting this. They have to put their names down here, as does the officiant. The rabbi, or some people will cross out rabbi and write cantor if it's the cantor. And one time when I was doing it, I wrote in student in front of rabbi when I was a rabbinical student.
It's very nice. I like
It is a nice one, and there are a number of egalitarian ketubot. The one thing to understand is, depending on the text of your ketubah, what this is missing from it, if you're looking at the halachic standpoint, is the act of kinyan, the actual, the fact that this is a contract of love. It's not entirely a financial contract, so this would be completely valid in liberal circles. This would not be seen as a valid ketubah in Orthodox circles. There is one text, which is the one that Miriam, my wife, and I used, that has a little bit of the kinyan aspect, where really we acquire each other. But it has enough that some Orthodox rabbis will recognize it as valid. Then there are some people, Rachel Adler, I believe, composed it. She's a professor of theology at HUC in Los Angeles, who said that the whole idea of the ketubah is archaic. And so rather we should be moving to something that really acknowledges the love and commitment. So she has a whole ceremony for it, but she has a contract that is called a Brit Ahuvim, a contract for lovers. Brit Ahuvim, a contract of the loves, which is lovely. And so if that's what would work for you, absolutely. And in cases where you have a traditional marriage, a marriage between same-sex Jews, or a marriage between a Jew and a non-Jew, this text requires an endation for it to be authentic, because it's not necessarily Kedat Moshe v'Yisrael. It's not according to the traditions necessarily. It's a new tradition. And so it's important to be authentic to what you're doing. So that is the ketubah, and often you can either have it written out completely, sometimes you can buy them in print, you can get a hybrid, but you need a sofer, a scribe, to do it for you. And then you'll sign it at the wedding ceremony. In terms of clothing at the wedding ceremony, all that's really required is that the clothes be your finest clothes, that they be attractive and important for the day, and that they be relatively modest. None of those Hollywood weddings where you see people wearing things that you wouldn't want your children wearing to a bar mitzvah. But at the same time, it's also the obligation that we have at a wedding is to celebrate and rejoice, which means you need clothing that permits you to do that. A bride's dress must permit her to dance.
And not to fall off when they take you up.
Yes, that's important.
Do Reform Jews wear a kiddo?
Yes, I'm getting there. Nice. It has become tradition for a bride, and a groom for that matter, but more often the bride, to wear white. Because white is a symbol of purity, and the Jewish wedding is actually seen like the holiest day of the year in your life. It's like Yom Kippur, where traditionally a woman, and sometimes a man, will go to mikvah, will go to a ritual bath shortly before their wedding to really come out purified. And then it's said that on your wedding day, this is not in your papers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I also photocopied more things just for notes for me, so I wouldn't forget anything. I'll undoubtedly forget things. But you're forgiven for everything on your wedding day. You start out pure, clean slate, because you're really creating this new world. You're taking part in this. So the bride will traditionally wear white. Doesn't matter if you've been married again and again and again, although we encourage getting it right by the second or third time.
I went right from the mikvah to the wedding.
Nice.
I didn't even pass go.
Would you ever, as a rabbi, seriously, let's say somebody came to you and said, this is my fourth marriage, I want to get married. Would you ever feel like you're ethically bound to say, look, why don't you first make sure that this is the person you want to marry, as opposed to just jumping into it because of...
I am ethically bound. Any marriage that I do, and that most rabbis do, we do counseling.
Okay.
And we meet with the couples. For example, I am performing a marriage in September, actually, the Saturday following Rosh Hashanah, the Saturday night. And lovely, lovely couple. If you're watching it, hello. You may be, I don't know. So I'm requiring that we meet monthly beforehand to do counseling and to make sure that this is the right match and that we know what to do. Most rabbis will require that.
So where's your cutoff? 5, 6, 4?
Whatever feels right. Partly it depends how soon the wedding is and how much time we have. At least 3 meetings would be required.
What if you feel that the couple is not?
Then I won't do the wedding.
You won't.
But I'll probably figure that out close too. But if things seem rocky in the beginning, I'll say I need to figure out if this is right for us. And if this is a problem, then you may want to go elsewhere. I believe it would be rare where you get the right feeling initially, and then the last one before the marriage, you figure out, wait a second, this isn't going to work. But they don't figure that out.
Food fight, brewing hot coffee.
Yes.
Probably. This may not.
In terms of the wedding rings, it's tradition, and really according to Jewish law, that they be simple. That they're not engraved with a lot of stones, because stones that could detract from the question of what is the value. It's harder to tell what the value is. And the value is important because in a sense it is an acquisition, it is a gift. There is supposed to be a different... traditionally, the man will just give the woman a ring. Today, both parties will give each other rings. But it's crucial to understand that it's not an exchange of gifts, because then there's no sense. It's seen as a trade. It's important that there be a difference in values. Traditionally, the man has a more expensive gift to the woman, but really you could do it either way today. But there'd be an understanding that it's not a trade, but there's really a gift being given for that marriage. Does that make sense? So, and it's supposed to be really a simple piece of jewelry. Could be an heirloom. It doesn't need to be bought for the occasion, but given as, and if it's not bought, if it's an heirloom, there must be an understanding from both parties that that is an heirloom. But it should be a simple wedding band, and later on you could get it decorated. But it should be fairly simple. And then the ketubah in itself is also a gift. It's a gift from one partner to the other, or a gift to each other. So let's maybe go to the outline of the ceremony now. Let me see what we have next in here. Okay, so before the ceremony, hold on, I have this in my notes. I'm sorry, notes are a little messy. Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. So the veil in itself, that's a tradition that we've developed, where that's a sense of modesty, where Rebecca veiled herself when she saw Isaac coming, to hide herself until the wedding. So that's a tradition, and some people will do the white veil, which is largely an Ashkenazi, the European tradition. Sephardic traditions, on the other hand, will often have different colors or gold intertwined, which you also see in a lot of Arab weddings too. So there are different traditions attached to the veil, and some people don't do it. And likewise, for what you said before, some men, including myself, will wear a kittel, which is also what men will traditionally wear in Yom Kippur, which is a very sheer, it looks like a bathrobe in a sense, a sheer robe that has the groom also wearing white. So wearing white for purity, and sometimes the groom will wear a talit as well.
And the groom has to make sure that he's wearing the right woman.
Exactly.
Under that veil.
So you lift up the veil before the wedding.
Ceremony.
So what happens, so there are different things that lead up to the marriage that one may do. Sometimes there will be a, what's called a tish, where there'll be a lot of schnapps or something to get really excited, and the man is there with all the men and all the buddies, and the man will often give some words of Torah, do a little bit of teaching, but it's really supposed to be fun, and all the boys who come to be there to celebrate with
And
the
the
tish.
women are separate.
Right. Will heckle the man, and really not let them teach, and really sing a lot of wedding songs, because it's rejoicing. And in traditional circles, this would be when the man would fill out the ketubah and have it prepared for the woman, which isn't always done, but that's how it was done traditionally. And the woman, the bride, would be waited upon by all the maidens, by all the ladies, and there would also be snacks and celebration that would be called kabbalat panim. And at the end of that, the woman would be veiled. So very special, very celebratory. Today, sometimes they happen separately, sometimes they'll happen together. Where really it's everybody celebrating together with the bride and groom. Or the bridegroom. Bridegroom refers to groom. It took me a long time to learn that one.
Is that what you did at your wedding?
We had I didn't give a Devar Torah because we realized most people in our wedding probably wouldn't know what to do with it. Because it's not
but you had a separate...
No, we had them together. We had them together, and it was a big celebration. And then often, in liberal circles, those will be followed by the ketubah signing. And either you go off privately with the family and the witnesses to do the ketubah signing, or we had ours publicly. We did ours together, where everyone comes around, and it's very festive. And you sign the ketubah, and you sign all the documents, and everyone's singing, and everyone's dancing,
Sounds
and it's
like
wonderful.
the cocktail hour.
Yes,
Like
beforehand.
before the wedding.
Exactly.
Cool. I really missed out on this all.
It's really.
Eating,
Big
failing,
time.
and
I'm just gonna put this down. No, actually, this sheet is helpful because I have too many pieces of paper there. So you have that, and then after that signing, in this I'm speaking from my own experiences of the wedding. If you have that signing, the wife isn't, or the bride isn't veiled before that signing. And all this gets adapted if it's same sex, and then you find different ways of embracing the traditions and bringing them in, but it would really make sense that you do them together, or perhaps, and actually in some liberal circles, at weddings, when you have the separate tish and kabbalat panim, it's not restricted to only men go to this one and only women go to this one, but sometimes it'll be that the friends of and the family of the groom go to the groom's one, and the friends and family of the bride go to that one. There are lots of different ways of doing it. And sometimes there'll be music there. So we get to the ceremony proper. It's typically not a Jewish thing to have all the bride's family and friends sit on one side, and all the groom's family and friends sit on the other. Everybody sits wherever everybody sits. And you'll have the chuppah, which is the canopy. It's a wedding canopy, which is a tradition. We lived in tents, and really it's the first sign of the household. This is a God had canopies over Adam and Chava, over Adam and Eve's marriage. And it can be, sometimes synagogues will own a beautiful chuppah. Sometimes people will use a talit, a prayer garment, which they'll keep for themselves, and it can be on a fixed structure. It has to be a temporary structure, just like the sukkah. It can't be permanent, but it does need to be covered. And sometimes people will carry in the poles. At my wedding, it was supposed to be permanent, but then the florist screwed up on that one. But it ended up being gorgeous, and they carried in the poles. It worked out marvelously. So people will carry that in. You'll have the clergy under the chuppah waiting, and you'll have the procession. One example of the procession is that first the rabbi and cantor come in, then grandparents come in, first the brides, then the grooms. Then you have, if you have ushers or groomsmen and bridesmaids, they all come in, and then sometimes separately, sometimes, groomsmen paired with bridesmaid, whatever you want. You have places where they have, the bride has both groomsmen and bridesmaids, or they have bridesmen and bridesmaids because they have more men friends. There are lots of ways of doing it. Then you'll have, if there's a best man and a maid of honor, I think that's the term, they'll come in, and then the groom's father and the groom's mother will come in, and the groom. And usually happens that the groom is waiting, and then then the bride's parents will walk halfway down, and then the bride will come in, and the parents will release the bride in a sense to the groom. And what you'll have in traditional circles then is that the bride will circle the groom 7 times. And there are a lot of different ideas for the rites. One is that the circle is a sign of divine protection against spirits. Another idea is that the bride is attaching herself, almost tying herself around the groom. And so, because of that tradition, what you see...
And also, I always thought of it as a creation kind of thing.
Very nice. The 7 days of creation.
Yeah, that's the way I thought of it.
I like that.
One thing I wish I had done.
Yes. I like that. It is 7:20 already. Can we go on for another 10 minutes? Is that
Sure,
okay?
I have fun tonight. So,
Yes, and then I must go after that. So we'll look at wedding pictures another time. Right. But it could be, and one tradition, some people don't do it at all, and what we did is that you'll do 3 and 3. So we're each attaching ourselves to each other,
that's interesting.
and then you walk hand in hand for 1, and you make a circle together. Then you go under and you have the first part of the ceremony, which is Kiddushin, because the marriage ceremony is actually divided into 2. And sometimes you'll have the groomsmen and bridesmaids standing on either side, flanking. What our rabbi did, we actually had 2 rabbis marry us, because we both had rabbis who we grew up with who were very special to us. So we just said, oh, you'll co-officiate, and it's great. By the way, it's tradition to have music played while you walk down the aisle or sang. It makes it festive, and they're traditional Jewish melodies that are often done, but it makes it festive. Oh, so he said that rather than having them facing everyone, all the bridesmaids and groomsmen should face inside the chuppah, along with the parents, because they're there for you, for the couple. Right. So you have that, and so they all face inward, and you have Kiddushin, which is where you say blessings, you have some wine, because every sacred moment should have some wine. So you have a little bit of wine, and that's where you have the ring ceremony. And so what the man says when the man gives the woman a ring, and I'm just saying this because this is the traditional aspect, and then it's adapted based on whether it's a wedding that's a little bit more modern in style. Men will give the woman the ring and say, Harei at mikudeshet li b'taba'at hazot kidat Moshe Yisrael. Behold, you are being sanctified through me, or promised to me in a holy way, by this ring. By this ring we shall be wed, or by this ring according to the traditions of Moshe and Israel, Moshe being Moses, and then the woman isn't required to say anything traditionally, but today, of course, the woman's going to say something and give the ring back. Some people will just switch that language to the woman saying it to the man, grammatically, but it doesn't always work that way because that's not the traditional. That phrasing is in itself a little inauthentic because it's not Kedat Moshe Yisrael, it's more modern. So some people will pick a different verse. And what Miriam said was a verse from Hosea, which is actually what you say when you wrap the tefillin around your finger. Va'eres tichli le'olam, va'eres tichli b'tzedek ve'emunah, v'chesed rachamim. Here under the chuppah, and giving this to all Jews and to the whole world, which is gorgeous, beautiful. May this marriage be only the beginning for the rest of the world. We start at creation, and we work our way to redemption. And this is all encapsulated in marriage. And so we celebrate that. And then, of course, you say, now you may kiss the bride, and there's some smooching. And then we have the tradition of usually the groom. It can be varied up. Who does it will break the glass. Some people say it's to show that we're still mourning the temple. We're still mourning that Israel isn't whole. I've heard interpretations that it's remembering that as a people we're not whole because we still have the Shoah, the Holocaust in the past. Some people will say that it's to show that the bond of marriage, even though you can be divorced, it's something permanent. It's something that can't be broken. And so when you shatter it, it's shown that a glass can never be mended. You can't undo this bond that you are building. And so I think there are a lot of beautiful meanings that are attributed to it. And then you go out and you dance, and it's exciting. And then you have yichud, unification, which means that the bride and groom, or the couple, then go off on their own for at least 18 minutes. And supposedly they consummate their marriage right there. That happens
Doesn't
sometimes.
work.
Sometimes you're
15
exhausted.
minutes just doesn't
Sometimes you are absolutely exhausted, and advice that I was given is to make sure your caterer puts all the hors d'oeuvres in your chamber, and you'll usually have a guard at your door making sure that nobody bugs you, keeping track of the time to make sure there's 18 minutes. And then you go and you celebrate. So let's look quickly, and then we've got to finish up.
At 18 minutes, like 18:5.
Exactly, yes. So let's finish up, and let's go to the last section, which is the second last page. So these are things to expect. Actually, yeah, second last page, second side. So the first thing to note is that, so this is interesting, usually says the name of the couple underneath the kippah, and you can usually take that kippah. There's a nice little guideline for attire for women, but as I've learned, it depends, if